Dennis Dixon, Soldier Creek, Grants Pass area. Also chairman of the Mining Advisory Committee for the Josephine County Board of Commissioners. Honorable Commissioners and fellow citizens, I have an article that comes directly off of Chaos Wild's website that's released on June 30th, 2015. And this comes from Peter DeFazio's website, and it says this. Washington, D.C., this is DeFazio speaking, seeking to protect a celebrated collection of world-class salmon and steelhead rivers, U.S. Representatives Peter DeFazio, Oregon District 4, Jared Huffman, California District 2, as well as Senators Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley, Democrats of Oregon, applauded temporary ban on new mining projects in an area covered by a bill that the congressmen and senators introduced. It's the Southwest Oregon Watershed and Salmon Protection Act. This temporary segregation measure will preserve the status quo and protect the public interests. DeFazio goes on to say, I stood on a rocky ledge high above Rough and Ready Creek's great sweeping bends, talking to local residents for the need to protect this beautiful wild space, said Congressman DeFazio. This withdrawal of any new mining in this area will protect biologically unique spaces in my district, as well as support Oregon salmon habitat, safeguard safe drinking water resources for thousands of families in the area. Quote, protecting Northern California's spectacular wild and scenic Smith River, the key source of drinking water for many communities, and it goes on and on. He says, I'm pleased that the Bureau of Land Management has agreed to our request to put the mineral withdrawal into Federal Register, Wyden says. That decision ensures there will be a robust process for public input, and that's headed our way. This is another mineral withdrawal. He quotes, protecting Oregon's most endangered rivers and preserving our treasured natural resource areas is important to the health of both our environment and recreational economy. This is another example of no coordination. They hadn't discussed this, as far as I know, with Josephine County citizens. And when you go into KS Wild and these other environmental programs, they are bragging on ECDC, KS Wild, and these other environmental agencies and affiliated groups literally brag on their websites that they're violating the 1872 mining law and due process. It's the law of the land. And I just want to bring that into the public record today. I think that we need to stringently look at these things, and I would recommend that we consider even litigating against the BLM and any of these people that are violating our county's resources. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Continuing over. Yes, in the back. And then next, ma'am, will be you.
Ron Smith, Grants Pass, Oregon. I want to thank the Board of Commissioners for stepping up to the plate and finally presenting this resolution about the wild and scenic rivers inclusion. Josephine County, 67% controlled by the federal agencies. I think sometimes we got to look backwards to see our way forward. Historically, this county has relied upon natural resource production. Historically, this nation has relied upon natural resource production. What made America great was our vast amount of natural resources. What's going to make Josephine County great is access to the vast natural resources that we have in it. Not only the timber, but the minerals. This mineral withdrawal, totally unnecessary. The county should weigh in on this. Federal Register is a terrible way to make law. I appreciate you guys stepping up to the plate on this wild and scenic river thing, but let's not forget that Josephine County, the reason Grants Pass is here is because gold was discovered here, and then came the agricultural and the mining to support it. It wasn't until in the 40s that timber became a big issue. In 1942, the largest employer in Josephine County was one gold mine, the Benton Gold Mine. Let's not lose track of where we came from and why we're here. Josephine County can be very productive economically, but not if we and you neglect the 67% that's controlled by the federal government. It's time to litigate these guys. These guys are not going to stop unless you litigate them, because they have an agenda. It's called Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. Google it, find out what it is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Judy, you be next.
I'm Carrie Rogers, and I live in Williams, Oregon.
And did you get that? And spell your name? It was?
Rogers.
Oh, I'm sorry. And your first name was?
Karen.
Oh, Karen. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you.
My husband works as a watershed habitat restoration manager out in Williams. He attended a water use meeting the other night that your Josephine County Water Master attended. A lot of pot growers were there. They won't tell you that they are all commercial water users. All of the pot they grow gets sold somewhere else. And she, being a county employee, says her hands are tied. People can complain about the water use out there, but she can't do anything. She can't shut off people's water. She can't control the use. Legally, you're supposed to be able to use a half of an acre worth of water from your own well, and you're not supposed to use well water for commercial pot growers. So what I see is that our own county people can't control what homeowners do on their own property. Mr. Heck and Mrs. Walker mentioned homeowners along the rivers and how they should have their rights. I don't think that we necessarily should have rights on our own property, not if it's hard on our habitat and our water resources. I obviously, for the first time ever, probably am against what you commissioners want to do. I want to see our wild and scenic area along the Rogue River expanded. It's good for wildlife and tourism. The county shouldn't be in the business of selling off timber or mining for money. Our tourism draw is our forests and rivers. If we can't increase our taxes, and it seems like we're unable to increase our taxes, we need to increase our only sustainable resource, completely sustainable resource, which is tourism. People come here from all over the world to see rivers and forests and wildlife that they don't have in their own countries or their own neck of the woods anymore because they've all been cut down. So I ask you please to increase our wild and scenic area, and if our county can't manage it or thinks the homeowner should be in charge, let the state or the federal be in charge if we can't do it in a really good way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Helen Scott, left bank of the Rogue River, up about a half a mile past Robertson Bridge. I came here this morning to particularly thank Commissioner Heck. Commissioner Heck pushed forward the resolution in opposition to including the Rogue River upper stretch in the national system, and I really appreciate your work, Keith, on that to get it going, and that I also appreciate that I was able to go to the administration meeting yesterday where you three commissioners worked on that resolution, and it was just a delight to see you all working together for the interest in Josephine County, and I just have to thank all three of you for the positive work you've done on this and your research, and thank you. One thing, when Commissioner Walker this morning mentioned, there's some sort of strange controls that come with Bureau of Land Management on wild and scenic rivers. In 1978, a U.S. Marshal knocked on our kitchen door with the paperwork that condemned 1.25 miles of our river property, a length along the left bank of the Rogue upstream of Foulke. We had a scenic easement condemned, and it's still obviously on that property, in order to put up a tent for myself and kids down on this 1.25 miles. I had to get a letter from the BLM that permits me to put up a tent for a certain period of time, and you can imagine what else we have to do and have not to do. It's very long-winded, but there are many restrictions that you've saved yourself a lot of trouble by if your resolution results in their providing or calling the river non-suitable because your county properties are substantial and you don't need a bureaucracy on top of them. You do a very good job with your riparian properties. And thank you for this opportunity to thank you.
Obviously, it was a tent with a foundation, though. That was the key. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is John James. I own 2 properties in Josephine County. I own one out on Russell Road in Merlin, and I own the only private piece of land within the existing wild and scenic section of the Wild Rogue River, the Lower Rogue River, Black Bar Lodge. So I can venture that I can probably address the concerns you should definitely have with regards to any more restrictions by expanding the wild section, because, as Commissioner Walker alluded to, without a doubt, there will be a whole next level of oversight control that will be, if the BLM is not willing to pay the cost of that, they're going to shift that either to the state or probably down to Josephine County, which we all know we can't pay for law enforcement, so I don't think we can afford to have more people out there trying to administrate more rules. My father-in-law's gone now. He's the original purchaser of Black Bar back in the 1959, 1960, and he was there to experience when the BLM came in and effectively strong-armed him. He was forced to sell out his private property rights in the form of a scenic easement. And if he were here today, trust me, his blood pressure would be off the charts, because he was threatened, coerced, and ultimately blackmailed into giving up a lot of his rights to do with his personal use of his private property, which he paid for. I believe in protecting this resource. My livelihood, probably above and beyond almost anyone else in the room, depends on it. And I find that over the years, the BLM, depending on whoever's in charge at their local offices or out of the Medford district, can be good to work with or sometimes not so good. You've got a small group of people that have an agenda that want to push forward an expansion of this, and it's just really not necessary. So I applaud the commissioners for taking up this resolution and presenting it. There's enough restrictions, as the lady who just spoke a minute ago alluded to, even within the recreation section of the river. There's a lot of control and a lot of restrictions. We're not going to have rampant logging and deforestation right down to the banks of the river. Simply not going to happen. Everybody in this room probably lives in either a house made out of wood or stone. Those are natural resources that have to be used in an ethical and reasonable manner, and we can't block all that kind of use. So, again, just to close and say thank you very much for taking up this resolution to oppose the inclusion of more river. It's not necessary. There's enough there now, and I think any reasonable person can understand that. And the burden upon probably the county and the private citizens would be more than anybody can imagine until you've lived it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much to talk about, so little time. Good morning. Larry Ford, 136 Ferry Road, Grants Pass. While I applaud all of your letters today, you're going out, I think they're very important. Like the gentleman from Black Bar Lodge, I'm very fortunate. I live outside the corridor, but we have neighbors right down the road that live inside. A couple of years ago, one of them was doing some remodeling on his house. The Wild and Scenic folks dictated the color he could paint his house and how he could build a pump house, small structure on his property, because he lives inside that quarter-mile limit. Now, without the use of a bulldozer, you would never be able to see his house from the river. He sits back on a bluff, but he's inside that corridor. So this legislation, well, it all sounds well and good to say wild and scenic. It really does not address the problems, and it becomes very restricted to what you can do if you own private property along the river. So I applaud these letters that you're sending out. It probably should have been written a little more stringently, but I know that you probably can't do that. The other one is, and it's been mentioned here, is the public television you guys use. My problem has always been with that is it's county business, and if you live in the county, you can't access it. I think maybe we should look at a different way, maybe put it on the internet, and fire the charter. I mean, I just think that if it's a county programming, it should be more available to the county and not just the residents of Grants Pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Jim Frick, Grants Pass, Oregon. I'd like to thank all three of you commissioners for doing what you did today. As chairman of the Southern Oregon Resource Alliance, we applaud you in actually noticing the arrogance of the federal government and especially the BLM to you who are elected officials and representing the 80,000 of us in this county. And I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for that. I've been in the real estate business 38 years in Josephine County. I own the Holiday Motel in Kirby, Oregon, which is a tourist area because the Oregon Caves is the second largest tourist attraction, or third, whoever you talk to, in the state of Oregon. And I've got to tell you that owning clear down to the Illinois River, I have 3 parcels that I own either along the Illinois River or Sucker Creek. And in my dealings with the Bureau of Land Management, all I've found is nothing but a difficult time in getting any kind of building permits. I have a gentleman that has 160 acres. He started out with 140, but he had to buy 20 more in a forest commercial zone up on Upper Deer Creek, who fought for 5 years to get a right of access to his property so that he could develop on it. His name's Don Stark. I have a client that has property on Riverbanks Road that's in the Wild and Scenic, sits just above Robertson Bridge. We went in to get a building permit. They said, well, you're in the Wild and Scenic. First you have to go to the Bureau of Land Management and get their approval on what your site plan is going to be. By the time we got done with all of the costs, the meetings, the interruptions, the delays, my client decided, I want to sell the property. I'm no longer going to build in Josephine County. That's what you're headed towards if you were to allow this. Second reason I'm up here is because I think that you guys need to, before this meeting on September the 20th, coming up on the proposed withdrawal and notification of public meetings, I think you need to get together with your legal staff and file a resolution opposing the mineral withdrawal for the 5-year period of time in the Illinois Valley watershed in the Galeese Mining District. This has been an end-run attempt, once again, by our federal legislators using the BLM to lock up more lands, make them so that they're less defensible for fire, less accessible for the people who have 1872 mining rights, and I think it needs to cease and desist, and only you three can do that. I say that the BLM is hosting an open hearing on the proposal on September 10th from 5 to 8. We believe the resolution is called for prior to that date. The county should arrange for the resolution to be presented to the BLM at that time, should be forwarded to Senator Wyden and Congressman DeFazio, as well as Congressman Walden. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Continuing on. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Judy Reynolds. I live in Josephine County.
Pull that microphone down.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay. A little different perspective here. Recently, a friend of mine in Sedona, Arizona, built a habitat to hatch a monarch butterfly. When the butterfly finally came out and unfolded its wings, it had everything it needed to survive, including an echinacea plant to eat. She set it free the next day. The survival of that monarch, such a small piece of beauty, is important because monarch butterflies, like so much of the natural world, are now threatened by habitat loss and global warming. Like our county's rivers and tributaries at this time of all times, they need greater protection, not less. I would urge the county commissioners to support rather than oppose the expansion of wild river status along the river. I see this as a primary responsibility of our county commissioners. Why? Because the value of Josephine County does not lie in allowing the few people to mine the river, to muddy the waters, or to do as they wish with their private property in the scenic area. The true diamonds in our backyard lie in the beauty of this region. That is where our brighter future lies, too. Perhaps we have so many wrecks in Josephine County now, the collapse of our security system, decline in habitat, the erosion of civil public discourse, because we keep looking in the rearview mirror, to the 1880s. It's 2015. We need to look to the future, and we need to embrace it. The Bay Area is just a day's drive from here. Population pressure will bring people to Josephine County looking for a lifestyle centered on the recreational possibilities of our great outdoors. Please stand up for our region's #1 asset, its beauty. Monarch butterflies, rivers, and fish don't vote, I know. But that is all the more reason to speak now for them with your support for the Wild River expansion.
Thank you. Mr. Swift.
Good morning, Commissioners. And if I might echo Mr. Frick, thank you for standing up to this BLM. I want to speak to the mineral withdrawal proposed by
Jack
the BLM.
Swift, and you live downstream, I think.
Yeah. Your name and address was?
Jack Swift, and I can be reached at jhswft@earthlink.net. I live right by Griffin Park, just outside the Wild and Scenic Corridor. Good.
Thank you.
Again, I want to talk about the BLM's proposed mineral withdrawal for the south and west end of the Illinois Valley. It would appear that this is an action, another of the actions of a runaway BLM. But as a matter of fact, the withdrawal proposal by the BLM was instigated by our elected Senator Wyden and elected Representative DeFazio back in January. And I would like our Board of Commissioners to invite the Senator and the Representative to attend a public forum here in Josephine County and have them try to explain to us why this is a good thing for their constituents. All right.